Cabinet Police and Fire on Thursday, 14th of September 2023, not 2022 on the paper. I'd like to welcome some of our guests from Police and Fire. I will start with Superintendent Pat Murphy, who is retiring in a week's time. So I think we'd like to acknowledge his 30 years of service. That is some shift to put in, and I'm sure there's many stories which we won't ask you to do publicly here today, but I think we have to recognise the dedication of our workers and police and fire, and particularly Pat Murphy at the moment, and I'm sure other members will join us in wishing you a very happy and fruitful retirement. In addition to Pat, we've got Chief Inspector Graham Galley and Area Inspector Michelle Grant, and from police, not police, Scottish Fire and Rescue, we have Group Commander for East Renfrewshire, Alan Coftree, and Watch Commander Paul McQueen. So welcome to this meeting. Thank you very much. So if we could go on to the first item on the agenda, apologies for absence.
I have apologies from Area Commander David McCarry.
Okay, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? No. So if we could move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the Police Scotland Performance Report for the first quarter of 23-24. And this will be taken by, is it by Graham? Oh, are you going to introduce it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for your acknowledgement of my service. It's been a fantastic career, and it's been a privilege to serve as a police officer in the communities of Glasgow since 2009, actually. So, but thank you very much. I hope it is a long and fruitful retirement. So, until I actually get back out to work, because I've spent enough time in the house walking the dog. So, so thank you very much for that. I'd just like to take an opportunity to thank Graham and his team for their continued commitment and dedication to policing the communities of East Renfrewshire. They do a fantastic job. The commitment and dedication that they show is second to none, and I'm highly privileged to be part of that team. It's a positive picture across performance for me, and considered demand in the service, but I think it's that continued focus on keeping people safe that's at the heart of policing that demonstrates the positivity in that picture in relation to performance. I look at across the piece, and I term it good old-fashioned police work, but if you look at the detections within the report that Graham's about to deliver, it's really a positive picture. So that good old-fashioned police work still going on out there, considering the demand that is on the service. As I say, I'm immensely privileged and thankful to Graham and his team for their continued work within the communities. For me, it's been an absolute privilege to work within the Golf Charlie subdivision in East Renfrewshire. They're an immense team over here who work really hard within the communities. I know they work really hard in partnership to make sure that the communities are safe. He's about to deliver, for me, a really positive picture across the subdivision, across East Renfrewshire. And again, they work extremely hard, and my thanks to both Graham and Michelle for leading such a fantastic team. So, listen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pat. And now over to Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to deliver the quarterly report for the first quarter of 23-24. First of all, I'd like to look at acquisitive crime. So overall, housebreakings have increased slightly for this period compared to last year. There have been 5 additional offences, bringing the total for this quarter to 34. A third of these offences were successfully detected. Every housebreaking is one too many. However, it should be noted that housebreakings are 27% below the 5-year average for this period. We continue to take every opportunity to promote home security within our communities and to tackle offenders that are identified. Looking at the theft of high-value motor vehicles, this is obviously a subject of concern for many residents in East Renfrewshire. Whilst this has been a significant issue nationally, I'm happy to report that motor vehicle crime in East Renfrewshire is down 6% overall for this year. Theft of motor vehicles is actually down 17%. However, theft from vehicles left insecure has increased from 5 to 12. We also take every opportunity to reinforce the message of securing property to deter opportunist theft. Looking now at crimes of dishonesty. The total number of crimes of dishonesty in East Shropshire has increased slightly this quarter compared to the same period last year. Whilst we have seen a 3% increase in the total, there has been a decrease in other Group 3 crimes and common theft. Fraud offences have returned to mirror national figures by increasing during this quarter. Whilst they've increased, there are only 14 additional offences this quarter compared to the same period last year, bringing the total to 78. Also following a national trend, we have unfortunately seen an increase of offences in the categories of theft by shoplifting. There were 75 offences recorded, which is an increase of 23 compared to this period last year. Over 40% of theft by shoplifting offences have been successfully detected during this period. And at the last Cabinet, we discussed in length the issues surrounding that and how the current economic climate has had an impact. Looking now at public protection. There were 30 sexual crimes recorded this quarter, which is slightly lower than the same period last year. We have seen a decrease of offences in the categories of rape and attempt rape, along with indecent and sexual assaults. We have seen an increase in communicating indecently and threatening disclosure of intimate images. We continue to highlight the risk and harm of sextortion and inappropriate communications through our social media messaging and the great work of our campus officers in education. Now looking at violent offences. Targeting domestic abusers and supporting victims is a policing priority in East Renfrewshire. The number of criminal domestic abuse incidents has reduced by 4% this year. Our domestic abuse-related crime detection rate has increased by 6% to 54%. We continue to maintain 100% success for our domestic bail check 24-hour compliance rate. These checks, along with other robust policing measures, have resulted in 13 offences being detected, whereby offenders have been caught breaching domestic bail conditions. Now I'd like to look at drug dealing and misuse. Our total drug crime offences recorded for this quarter sits at 48, which is a 7% increase on last year. Importantly, 98% of offences have been successfully detected, and we have recorded an increase in the supply of drug offences, with 5 recorded this quarter. We continue to work in partnership with East Renfrewshire Alcohol and Drug Partnership to tackle the public health issues associated with drug use, and to support the Mobile Harm Reduction Unit by signposting those most in need. Now looking at violent crime in terms of the Fair East Ren Plan, reducing social isolation, loneliness and increasing safety. There's been an increase in non-sexual crimes of violence for this quarter. There have been 36 offences recorded for this quarter, which is up from 24 last year. We see the highest percentage increase in the category of serious assaults, which has climbed to 9 offences this year, of which 7 have been successfully detected. Analysis has shown that there is no overt pattern or connections across these serious assaults, and the number of offences is still 14% lower than the 3-year average. Recorded offences relating to offensive or bladed weapons has also increased. There were 36 offences recorded, which is 7 higher than last year. We continue to target violence hotspots to reinforce our enforcement and prevention message across East Renfrewshire. Now looking at antisocial behaviour and disorder. The number of complaints regarding disorder have remained stable at 657, which is a 0.3% increase from the same period last year. This number is substantially lower than the 1,390 incidents recorded in the same period for 2020-21. The number of hate incidents and hate crimes recorded in East Renfrewshire has reduced by 29% and 48% respectively. We work closely with our diverse communities to identify issues and to address them quickly. Now moving on, we are applying a significant focus on fire raisings this year. Some of the fires this quarter have been reported near to or on school grounds. This quarter has seen the number of fire raisings increase to 18 from 9 last year. Our campus officers are working with the Education Department, Youth Services and colleagues in Scottish Fire and Rescue Services to implement a multi-agency approach. This approach is focused on early intervention and education and will also see an interactive programme led by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service being added to our new October outreach initiative run by our campus officers. Moving on, violent crime continues to be a concern for our communities, and officers have dealt with a number of violent offenders in the first quarter of this year. In April, a 24-year-old woman was assaulted and found injured outside a property in Barrhead. 3 males aged 19 and 21 were identified as being responsible, arrested and charged. During this quarter, our community officers carried out proactive patrols addressing community concerns in relation to disorder and violence. They identified and arrested a 26-year-old male within the Barrhead area after he was found in possession of a knife within a public place. Following reports of a 43-year-old male having been assaulted and threatened in June, extensive investigations identified a 63-year-old female and a 32-year-old male as responsible. Both were arrested and charged. Now looking at drug supply and manufacture, the first quarter of 23-24 has seen some significant seizures of controlled substances. We continue to act upon intelligence and undertake proactive patrols, which are a key part of our activity in reducing harm in our community. In April, officers stopped the driver of a vehicle within a local authority area under the misuse of drugs legislation. The 21-year-old male driver was arrested for failing a roadside drug swipe and charged with road traffic offences and possession of controlled drugs. In June, we assisted officers from our Serious and Organised Crime Unit who had attended an address in Barrhead area in order to execute a search warrant. A 36-year-old male was arrested after significant drug and cash recoveries were made with a street value of approximately £10,000. Looking at dishonesty, crimes of dishonesty, our focus remains on protecting the most vulnerable people in our communities. We continue to work with our partners in specialist departments such as Trading Standards and our own Economic and Financial Investigation Unit to ensure a high-quality approach to investigating these crimes, as well as protection and support to victims, businesses and the wider community. During this quarter, officers investigated a large-scale fraud involving a Giftnet business being defrauded of monies to the value of over £100,000. Throughout the lengthy and complex investigation, the victim was supported by our Specialist Investigation Unit as well as our local policing team. The collaboration between local and specialist officers with our partners in the banking industry and other UK police forces saw the victim being refunded the funds. The victim was so pleased with the police investigation and professional conduct of all involved, he wrote to our Chief Constable praising them. In March, a 34-year-old male was arrested and charged with fraud after receiving a 4-figure sum of money for landscaping work which he never intended to carry out. After defrauding the victim, he refused to engage and actively evaded police contact. However, by working collaboratively through the robust investigation, we actively pursue these individuals regardless of the passage of time. Now, looking at protecting vulnerable people in terms of road users, Police Scotland will work in partnership to influence driver and road user behaviour, reduce road casualties, and detect and deter all types of criminals on our roads. We work with a range of partners and specialist road policing officers, also work within East Renfrewshire to target criminality on our roads. In April, a 30-year-old male was charged with careless driving after being found driving in excess of the speed limit on the M77. In May, a 34-year-old male was charged with various road traffic offences after being observed by officers within the Clarkson area driving a vehicle in such a condition that it was dangerous to other road users. Now, looking again at domestic abuse, adult protection and child protection. In September 2022, East Renfrewshire was chosen to take part in a custody pilot scheme whereby all evidence in relation to domestic crimes would be presented to the Crown Crown Prosecution and Fiscal Services at the very start of the legal proceedings. This would allow evidence to be reviewed and outcomes reached much sooner in order to protect and support victims and witnesses and avoid delays. In this quarter, 90% of reported cases were concluded via this process, meaning victims and witnesses did not have to endure giving evidence at court or being impacted by court attendance. The success of this pilot is being rolled out nationally across all other areas in Scotland. Police Scotland's strategy to tackle violence against women and girls was presented to the SPA in Q4 and was subject to final approval in Q1. There are a number of proposals within the strategy, and we continue to work together with our partners in East Renfrewshire Violence Against Women and Girls group to tackle this issue and create a society free from violence, abuse, harassment and exploitation. Finally, looking at young people. Across our partnership approach, we believe that it's important to understand the issues and root causes that impact on our young people. The establishment of a bespoke tactical group involving a range of partners, including colleagues from community safety, youth services, education, and health and social care partnership, has seen positive steps and activities being set up to address a variety of developmental and antisocial behaviour concerns. Our campus officers took part in a number of activities to support young people in their life choices and to discourage antisocial behaviour as they embark on their summer holidays. Through this interaction and exposure to new and different challenges, we aim to build self-esteem, confidence and social skills. We continue on this theme into Q2 and the year ahead. And Chair, I would just like to say this week actually marks my first full year as the Area Commander for East Renfrewshire, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank Superintendent Murphy for all his support during this period and wish him well in his retirement, but also to thank my team and the partners that I work alongside with, including the elected members here at East Renfrewshire. It truly is an area that I'm extremely proud of, and the partnership and the working that takes place here, it really is second to none. So thank you.
Graham, thanks for a very comprehensive report, and I can't believe a year's gone by already. That's pretty incredible. So thanks for that. So if I can ask for questions, Councillor Pragnell?
Thank you. I'm really interested to see the results of the pilot, the custody court pilot scheme. I have a few questions on this. When will this report of the pilot be concluded and presented, and will this report be presented to the Scottish Government, and will we get the findings, will the findings be presented to this Police and Fire Cabinet? I think it would be really interesting. We know certainly in East Renfrewshire it's been successful, so it would be great to actually have a full sense of what's going to happen as a result of it.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. You know, it is an area that we focus on intensely, domestic violence, and it was great to have the opportunity to be part of the pilot. There were two other local authority areas involved, Tayside and Hamilton. It has been reviewed, and there's already plans in place that it will be rolled out across Greater Glasgow, the rest of Greater Glasgow. The part of that review took place after this report was submitted, but I'm more than happy to furnish you with more information after the meeting and follow up with you to give you more detail around that. Thank you.
Councillor Pragnell, did you have other questions, or was it that was it? Thank you. Councillor Bamforth.
I've got a couple of questions. I don't know if I ask them all at once, and then you can reply. I agree with Councillor Pragnell. I would be really interested. I think it's great, and I know I bring up this at every Police and Fire Cabinet. I'm interested in the pilot as well. It doesn't say if the pilot. I know it was a pilot. Is it continuing just now? Are we continuing to do it? And I know it mentions domestic abuse, and I know your definitions of some things are slightly different to what the general public would understand or what we'd interpret it. See things like online grooming and sexual exploitation, the kind of online crimes, I presume that's not included in the domestic abuse, although happens in the domestic home, as it were. So I just wondered if that was included in it, because I know that is a major issue about how long it can take those cases to come to court, and sometimes when there is online grooming, I know there can be other issues going on at home in tandem with that. My other question is about the antisocial behaviour, and I guess it's for the fire brigade as well. And you've mentioned all the good work that you're doing in terms of the collaboration and early intervention and working with children and young people and social work, etc. I spoke to Michelle about, I think it was about June about it, and we were chatting about how anecdotally you were seeing that this wasn't just East Renfrewshire, it seems to be more widespread, and we talked about, you know, what kind of, not that we were sitting analysing it, but about, you know, what the age groups seemed to be pretty consistent, and then was it children who had missed, not children, young people who'd missed during COVID the transition periods that they would normally have. And I just wondered if you'd been able to drill down to that. Is it widespread in Scotland, within the UK? Is it, because I know even at the weekend, it's not confined to school pictures, although that has been a big problem at the weekend in Eaglesham and the playing field. Seems to be, although it's not school premises, there seems to be a lot of sports facilities that are particularly targeted, because the pitch at Eaglesham at the weekend was set on fire. And actually one of the people who reported it to me phoned the police and fire brigade, who were out very quickly, and she said how horrific it was. She was watching them setting fire to cones and then running through the flames. And it's really quite scary what these young folk, how much danger they're putting themselves in. So yeah, I just wondered if you'd managed to drill down to, I know you're not psychologists and but you know, if you've got more of an understanding of that. And my last question, you'll be glad, is are we continuing with the area the ward meetings, because I think they're all quite useful for you to have them every quarter. But I know we've had one since the pandemic, but we used to have them in the past fairly regularly, because it's always good for local councillors to be able to go back to residents, you know, rather than wait till the police and fire cabinet, just to reassure them what you're doing proactively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And if I miss any of your questions, please do pull me up. The first question was around the pilot, and I can confirm that actually for us it's business as usual now. It has moved into that arena. The officers have really taken it to heart and see it as business as usual. So just to give a kind of brief understanding of it, so it's in relation to custody cases. That's where someone is arrested and sent to court the next lawful day. So it wouldn't cover all crimes necessarily, depending on whether or not someone is taken into custody, and then there's the legal right to hold them to the next lawful day. Some cases we report people to the fiscal and then they'll appear at a later court date. What I can say is that it's not just confined to domestics within East Renfrewshire. We're also working with the fiscal service around other offences as well. So it's not just domestic offences. It'll also be other areas where there's a high chance of either plea or from an accused the next lawful day or shortly thereafter. So it's one of these pilots that has grown. It had its initial remit was around custody cases, but we're now looking at a far wider spectrum of offences. So hopefully that answers your question in relation to that aspect. Antisocial behaviour and fire raising. So it's correct to say in the report that this year we saw what looks like quite a dramatic increase in fire raisings. The numbers are up to 18 from 9, which is a big increase. What I'll first of all say is that this quarter last year was unusually low, the figures, so the comparison is slightly skewed by that, but it is at the high end. Having looked nationally in Scotland and across the UK, it is an area that is riding high just now. In England and Wales, we can't do a direct comparison because the Home Office stats are recorded differently under different categories, but it would be criminal damage and arson in England and Wales. And they saw a significant spike after 2020-21, and that spike has remained at that level since then. So there is a national picture there. Just to try and reassure the elected members, we currently sit at 1.9 fires per 10,000 members 10,000 of the population. Nationally in Scotland, it's 14 per 10,000. So we are in a much better place than many areas in Scotland, but that doesn't mean we're resting on our laurels in relation to this. So as I outlined earlier on, although the numbers are low, we are working closely with our partners, many of them round the table today. So as part of our 3-week outreach programme with our campus officers this summer, we had a day where the fire service came along and ran a interactive session with us. We've also planned one for our first ever October outreach programme, which will take place this year. So there'll be another day then. Youth Services have engaged the fire service for a week's programme, which will take place in, I believe, in November, but the fire service can confirm that. And we're engaging with Stephen Bell's team around the opportunities in relation to CCTV in the environment of East Renfrewshire Council buildings, schools, etc. I would say that, although there's 18 fires there, quite a lot of them are actually almost all of them have been open place fires, and that maybe gives you an idea of leading to the individuals involved. We did talk about young people being involved. Earlier on, you mentioned it yourself. What I'd say is through our work with HSCP, Youth Services, Stephen's team and others, we have identified that there's a cohort of individuals who, due to COVID, missed some of the youth service engagement that would have normally taken place. Those individuals are now hitting 14, 15 years of age. So we're aware of who many of them are, and we're actively engaging with them through all the partners to ensure that it's a collective approach. And as you pointed out earlier on, yes, there may be a criminal aspect to this, but you also pointed out there's a health, safety and danger to the individuals. So we're treating it with the utmost importance, and hopefully all the measures we're put in place will bear fruit, and we'll be able to report that back to you. Finally, it was on the council award meetings. I was really happy to have them reinstated last quarter. It was great to speak to many of the councillors at these meetings and have that opportunity to speak to you on a one-to-one basis. Stephen, our local authority liaison officer, this week will be emailing out the next set of dates with an option for us to meet in person this time. So we'll gauge the views of the elected members to see if that works better than in Teams. But I'm looking forward to that taking place. And if it is in person, I will bring the cakes. So I think that answers all your questions. If I've missed anything, please do let me know.
Councillor Bamford, you happy with that response? I thought that was a very comprehensive response. Thank you very much. Graham, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks very much for the report, Graham. And yeah, first year anniversary, excellent. It's been an interesting year. And all the best to Patrick in your retirement. I hope you very much enjoy it. I have a first question that's probably a quick one. In regard, you touched on shoplifting. And I did note with interest recently in the press that the head of John Lewis, I think it was, is describing it as an epidemic. And I'm sure, well, the numbers are going up, and hopefully, but it's more to do with how we deal with it. And you've touched on how we deal with young people, and obviously you see now in shops at the moment they're tagging things because of inflation have actually become really, quite expensive, and that's obviously. But the problem is that people need these things to live. So in terms of how you deal with the shoplifting offences and awareness of the potential other aspects that may cause the person to actually to do it, can you give a bit of an enlightenment on how you deal with those?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. This was touched on at the previous cabinet meeting, and just to reiterate, there's many aspects to why someone may be taking, shoplifting or committing offences, and we try to look at that holistically to understand what the impacts and the drivers are. Some of these groups are organised crime groups that are travelling around the country and committing their offences and walking out the door £1,000 of with goods. And through our partnership with Retailers Against Crime, the local retailers and trading standards, we target these individuals. But also on the flip side, we have people who are struggling to feed their families, and we fully appreciate and understand that. And that's why it's really important that we signpost them, and through our vulnerable persons database we're able to highlight that to HSCP so that they're aware of individuals, and that additional support can be put in place for them. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of the rounded picture.
Absolutely, it gives reassurance that in terms of how you're dealing with it. Thanks very much. Second thing is about I was at the East Mearns Community Council, and obviously the fire at Maidenhill, and a couple of your officers attended. I was telling Michelle about it earlier, and it got quite heated. Not heated's not the right word, but they were very keen to know that that it was being dealt with, but it was difficult for your officers to explain further about the partnerships that were involved, and I think I had to, and I hopefully gave the community some assurance that they talked about children just getting a slap in the wrist. I said to explain to them that's certainly not what the approach is, and I just want to acknowledge that in terms of how both your colleagues, how you've dealt with the fire, and obviously the school's very concerned about the. Thankfully, there's not a huge amount of damage to the school itself, but the loss of the plants in the garden that they had, the secret garden, was quite an impact for them. But I do know that towards the end of the meeting, they acknowledged that I think it's working, the partnership approach, because they feel that it has died down significantly. So that's very good to see. So I just wanted to mention that. But the last thing then is I've become aware of Greenbank Gardens. Mentioned it again to your colleague Michelle earlier. Now they've experienced vandalism and a break-in, and again I believe because of I went into it in detail with Michelle, but then again they think there's children involved. But I do believe they've got CCTV. But again, it touches on what Councillor Banforth is saying about not wanting this to spread with more and more instances of it. But I do know that the staff, the National Trust staff, have been engaging with your officers, so be keen to get a follow-up possibly on that. I don't believe you have much that you could add just now on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and thank you for support in that meeting last week as well. We try our best to explain what can sometimes be quite a complex picture, and just to reassure you, so in terms of, although people want to see us out there arresting individuals who are committing offences, we're talking about young people who sometimes are under the age of criminal responsibility, and our responsibility is to ensure that the right partners are engaging with these individuals. So through that, just to explain, we do have the early effective intervention process which will take place initially. Then what we look at is voluntary measures along with partners in social work in terms of engaging with individuals, and then it would then escalate to compulsory measures. So there is an arsenal of tools there, but it's how we use them and use them in the right way, and that can only happen through a partnership approach. I'll be the first person, I'm sure Michelle and Superintendent put their hands up to say we'll never police our way out of these issues. We have to look at them across the whole of society and the whole of the community to ensure that we get the best approach. And I'm glad to see that the feedback that you're getting is that the approach is working. In terms of the Greenbank Gardens, that's obviously an ongoing issue just now, but I'm more than happy to pick that up with you afterwards if that's okay.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. So I don't think we've got any other questions. Just a couple of comments from me, if I can. Really pleased to see the success with the Giffnock business and recovery of the fraudulent money. Financial crime is always very, very difficult to detect. So, and that is a huge amount of money which would have had a huge impact on that business. So well done for that, and it's good to see that we are able to detect those and recover funds as well. So that's excellent on that. Do you have a question on hate crime? So hate incidents and hate crimes both gone down significantly on prior year. Any sort of colour on what's driving that at all?
So in terms of the decrease, what I'd say is, through Michelle, who's a area inspector, and myself and the team, actually, we have a very close working relationship with a lot of our communities, diverse communities within East Renfrewshire. And I think that good engagement, regular engagement, we get round the table, allows us to sometimes shortcut issues. So sometimes the police are the last to know about things that are happening, and by that point it escalates. By having that close relationship, we're able to identify these issues early, and hopefully that will continue to be the trend as we move forward. There'll be international dimensions, there'll be local dimensions, but I think the key to it is that close communication and partnership working between our different diverse groups that we've got in the community.
That's very helpful to know. Thank you very much. So if we've got no other questions on police, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. And I think Alan Coftree is going to take us through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for the opportunity to present a performance report for Q1 covering the period from the 1st of April to the 30th of June 2023. The report measures our performance against the key priorities within our local plan for East Renfrewshire and the challenges that we encounter in achieving these priorities within our communities. It also highlights our continued commitment to address these challenges and the positive work carried out by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service in conjunction with our partners to resolve them. Chair, if I could take a moment prior to starting my report, I would like to give you an overview of our Community Safety Engagement Department and highlight some of our ongoing initiatives. You'll see today I've got Watch Commander Paul McQueen with me, who oversees the day-to-day running, and during scrutiny I'll always talk about the Community Action Team, so I thought it was pretty pertinent to give a wee overview of some of the stuff that they're involved in, and also to introduce Paul. So the Community Action Team within East Renfrewshire is led by Watch Commander Paul McQueen, who's here today as an observer. The team has a further 5 members within it, comprising of a crew commander, a community firefighter and 3 community safety advocates, all of whom work daily within our communities to identify and support the most vulnerable. The team's key functions are aligned to the SFRS National Prevention Strategy and our local fire plan, which include the 6 indicators which are included within the report that I provide to this Cabinet. I would like to highlight some of the key programmes our Community Action Team is currently involved in, and some that are due to deliver to drive down activity within East Renfrewshire. So, adult protection and child protection are centrally managed by the team, who provide specialist support and training to our operational fire stations. The team also work closely with all of our partners to ensure relevant support is given to all identified individuals, and where appropriate, suitable detection and fire retardant equipment is supplied by the team or through our operational crews to deliver to the vulnerable individuals. Fire service experiential training, which I'm quite passionate about. I wrote the programme for this many years ago, and I'm glad to say that we're still using it within the fire service. So that's delivered by the team, and it's available to all partners, and I would urge anyone who would like to get the training, whether it be councillors, whether it be any of your departments, contact Paul and we'll arrange to deliver that training. Very pertinent training, and it gives an understanding and awareness of fire-related hazards within the domestic environment, and it enables people to identify who may be at risk and then put them through the appropriate referral pathways to us to carry out an early intervention. And hopefully this stops someone ultimately becoming a statistic because of our early intervention. Water safety and road safety programmes are delivered to all schools within East Renfrewshire annually, and the team also form part of the East Renfrewshire Water Safety Group, as well as the National PAWS Partnership Approach to Water Safety Group. These groups have identified and reviewed all significant bodies of water within East Renfrewshire, and we've also formulated incident response plans. So an incident response plan is where our operational crews will visit the site, and some of the basic things that we don't think about, so how we get access to a body of water, how we get our resources in there, the best approach, logging any activity that's in there, and having an immediate response plan so as that when unfortunately the event happens, and hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, we know exactly we're ahead of the game, we know what we're doing when we arrive there. So that allows us to prepare for that. The team also adopt a digital first approach to road safety by delivering programmes based on state-of-the-art virtual reality simulators to create a real life experience for young people to reduce road traffic collisions. The team also work closely with Police Scotland in various programmes to reduce demand in this type of activity, and recently launched an initiative within Glasgow Airport to provide road safety advice to foreign visitors as they were arriving within the country, and that was very successful and something a wee bit out of the ordinary. The team, which are highly qualified in youth engagement, are in the final stages of preparing for an inaugural programme of fire skills in partnership with East Renfrewshire Council, which will be held at Clarkston Fire Station. So that's a one-week course where we'll host 10 students from local schools, and it's aimed at building confidence and life skills, as well as providing education through carrying out the role of a firefighter for a week. During the week, we'll also receive presentations from colleagues in Police Scotland, Ambulance Service, and other partners, as well as training in CPR and other life skills. And it'll culminate in a presentation on the Friday afternoon and a parade, which everyone will receive invites to. And I would welcome, you know, if you've got room in your diary, just to attend on the day. It's a brilliant thing. I've been involved in it for many years, and I used to run it in the previous area I worked within, and it's a very successful programme. The team are also instrumental in supporting both Barrhead and Clarkston community fire stations in setting up and supporting referral pathways for home fire safety visits and falls referrals, and recently carried out an initiative with colleagues within East Renfrewshire Telecare, which offered all residents who had a telecare system a home fire safety visit. This has resulted in over 60 high-risk visits being carried out over the last few weeks, and whilst that puts a significant impact in terms of workload on our stations, we can put measures in place to accommodate this, but it means that we're getting in the door with the people that's most vulnerable, and really that's the challenge, is early intervention and getting in there and identifying the people before an incident happens. I would like to record a personal thanks to Paul and his team for the continued hard work which supports my area and supports us all that work in partnership within the area. And as Graham spoke about earlier, I've worked in many areas now in many departments throughout the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and this is certainly, in terms of partnership working, it's really everybody works together. It's not a chore, it's not difficult to work together, and I'd just like to pass out my thanks to everybody involved in that as well. And again, thanks to Paul and his team for their ongoing commitment, because without that every week I wouldn't be able to deliver the report, and once again we'll have a fairly positive report this time. So thank you, Chair, and I'll now go through the report. So first I'd like to give you a quick overview of the engagement activity and some of the equipment that we've distributed across East Renfrewshire over the past quarter. So community activities carried out by the Community Action Team were 25 during this reporting period, and by operational crews they had 81. We carried out 358 home fire safety visits across the area, and our high risk visits totalled 114. Post-domestic incident responses, which were carried out following an operational incident, we had 51 of those, and from them we generated 49 home fire safety visits, so nearly one for every incident response following, or every response following an incident. And we fitted 121 detectors during this period as well. So again, getting detection fitted early within the premises is key to it. So Chair, moving on to the first indicator, so accidental dwelling fires, it's positive report a reduction of 24% on the year-on-year indicator and a reduction of 2% over the 3-year average. It's also worthy of note that there was no firefighting action required in 69% of these incidents, and that detection was present and raised alarm within 78% of them. Distraction whilst cooking remains the main contributor of accidental dwelling fires and emphasises the importance of having suitable detection within the home at all times, as we've already spoke about. To support the reduction of accidental dwelling fires, our Community Action Team continue to work with our partners to prioritise high-risk home fire safety visits, both through our website and through our reciprocal referral pathways, which we've set up with partners. And our operational crews also continue to carry out targeted local initiatives in areas where there has been more than one accidental dwelling fire. This again is key to it. If we're picking up the trends in the areas where we're getting statistical information that shows us there is activity, then we address that straight away. We're also continuing to deliver the FSET training, which is a fire service experiential training, to home carers and care home staff within East Renfrewshire to support the identification of individuals at risk within their homes. Key is getting our partners who go through the door and recognise the people that's vulnerable and referring them back to us, and this has been very successful. And it supports the identification, as I've said, it supports the identification of individuals at risk within their homes. As through our research and statistics, we know that early identification and intervention is key to reducing this type of incident. In terms of accidental dwelling fire casualties, it's positive to report that there's only been one fire casualty in this reporting period, which is an adult male who required only first aid at the scene and did not require hospital treatment. This indicator also sees a 50% reduction against the same reporting period last year and a 40% reduction over the 3-year average. This again confirms the importance of having suitable early detection within the home to reduce injuries sustained from dwelling fires. It also confirms that we're continuing to gain access to the most vulnerable within our communities, and our post-domestic instant response programme continues to be an extremely effective process by which to gain access to premises and identify individuals who are most at risk. Our fire crews in East Renfrewshire continue to have the highest attainment rate of this type of engagement in the whole of Scotland, which is a major achievement, and that's been continuing now for probably 9 months. So well done to them, and another good achievement. Unintentional harm. So while there's only a slight increase of 11% on the year-on-year indicator, it is disappointing to note that 90% of these incidents were road traffic collisions. We also see an increase of 33% on the 3-year average. However, it is important to note that this is against historically low figures. So we attended 9 road traffic collisions inside during this reporting period, all involving cars or vans. All the incidents involved were minor in nature, with firefighters requiring only to make the vehicle safe and the occupants only requiring precautionary checkups. Also, the increase in this category within this reporting period can be attributed to the proximity of reporting boundaries, as 4 of the casualties within this area breach upon one of our local boundaries, and it's quite difficult. So I've drilled down since I submitted the report to find out why we have, an increase like this, which, albeit 4, it's a significant amount. However, it's due to the boundary. So if our appliance goes as a second appliance to support a first appliance, it will be attributed sometime during the report to us. However, I've dug down further into that, and I can confirm that that wasn't within our area. So we also attended a further incident to recover an elderly female who had fallen down an embankment and had a suspected broken leg. Our community action team and operational crews continue to focus on road safety campaigns across our schools, including the Young Driver Initiative and social media campaigns to reduce this type of incident across East Renfrewshire. We also have initiated a falls referral process, which is tied into our home fire safety visit process to identify individuals who already have, or due to their mobility, have the potential to have a fall, and they will be referred to East Renfrewshire Health and Social Care Partnership Falls Clinic. This has been extremely successful. So if we're carrying out a home fire safety visit, we'll go through the normal questions, and then at the end we'll ask if they're maybe elderly or infirm individuals within the premises. We'll ask if they've had a fall, and then we'll ask, have you had more than one fall? And if they're happy, then we'll make an automatic referral through. We all know that, again, stopping this type of activity early on takes a huge amount of capacity away, or it releases a huge amount of capacity to colleagues within NHS, whether it be ambulance or accident emergency. But more importantly, it means that these people, because elderly people, once they fall, there's a significant impact on them for the rest of their life. So again, early intervention, partnership working is key to reducing this at an early stage. Moving on now to deliberate fire setting, it's disappointing to report a 60% increase on the year-on-year indicator. However, it is worth noting that, again, over the last 3-4 years, that's against a historically low figure. So we had, and that's reflected against only a 2% increase on the 3-year average. Refuse and grassland fires are, again, the main contributors to the increase in this indicator, and also the weather being a key factor. So the time of the year, last couple of years, a bit more rain at that time of the year, the figures are down. If the weather's up, the young people are out and about, and this is when we tend to get it. What I would support that by, or I would caveat that by saying is that we've been very successful in identifying, as Graham alluded to earlier, certain groups of people in certain areas, and our technology and our reporting processes are key to this. So being able to identify the trends and put measures in place again to reduce this, and we'll see a significant drop in that in the following quarter. Our community action team and operational crews continue to deliver our youth engagement programmes to our schools, and our prevention team also continue to carry out post-fire audits, and they provide advice and support to relevant premises and local businesses to reduce the risk of deliberate fire setting. We also continue to work closely with our internal and external stakeholders, including Police Scotland and East Renfrewshire Council, to reduce the potential for this type of activity. Now, I mentioned there our enforcement teams working closely with local businesses. This is key to it because we spoke earlier, and Graham spoke in detail about some of the incidents we're having. So we have traffic cones, we have stacks of cardboard and different things like this. It's key to engage with our local businesses to make sure that they're removing. So if we've got a road repair on, or we've got a shop, for example, that have a cardboard storage area, that this is taken inside at night, traffic cones, etc., road furniture is removed at the end of their job, because if it's left lying about, then that means that there's a potential there for it to get used for antisocial behaviour and for fire-related criminality. Non-domestic fire safety. So again, it's positive to report a 60% decrease in the year-on-year indicator and a 7% decrease on the 3-year average. One incident involved a commercial premises with no damage, and the other incident involved a fire within a domestic shed. Our dedicated enforcement officer for East Renfrewshire, so we now have, we've kind of changed the process within East Renfrewshire, and I've got a dedicated enforcement officer who will carry out thematic audits within the area. So in any area where we have areas of activity, or we have unwanted fire alarm signals, for example, the auditing officer will immediately go in there and start to have that kind of further engagement. So where our crews will have initial engagement, our auditing officer going in there can then carry out further engagement and look at processes to be put in place to reduce this, and that's been successful. So the other incident was a country club which suffered no damage, and where a post-fire audit was carried out, and advice was given to duty holder to effect remedial action to minimise future occurrence. And finally, Chair, it's positive to report a reduction of 18% against the year-on-year indicator for UFAS. So Councillor Bamford is smiling there. We do see a slight increase of 13% on the 3-year average, and this is disappointing, as you'll note that again, the majority of UFAS incidents are avoidable and caused by human error or faulty equipment, predominantly within the education setting. So the reduction of UFAS continues to be a key priority within East Renfrewshire, and though our processes have changed, we will still continue to work and treat that as a priority. And our UFAS champions placed within each of our stations engage with the duty holder at every instant. So every instant we go to, we fill out a form and we record where the incident has happened within the premises, and that allows us to build up a picture. So then we'll move on to what we call a stage 2. So at stage 2 intervention, there'll be a letter sent out to the duty holder for the premises, and then we'll move on further to stage 3, where our enforcement officer will then go out and engage with individuals. So, for example, a shopping centre, it won't just involve going out and dealing with one premises within the shopping centre. We'll engage with everybody within there, and we're starting to see a big impact there. So again, as I've said, it continues to be a key priority within East Renfrewshire, and our UFAS champions placed within each of the stations engage with the duty holder at every incident to advise and support them. Our prevention team also identify key areas of activity and engage with the duty holder to instigate the most appropriate solution, whether it be mechanical, staff training, replacement of equipment, or where deliberate, identify the cause and pursue through the appropriate channels. Our prevention officers are also currently engaged in a series of audits within identified premises of high activity to review practices which can be improved and reduce the instances of UFAS across East Renfrewshire. Chair, this concludes my report. Thank you again for the opportunity to present it, and I'm happy to take any questions you or any of the other members may have.
Thanks very much, Alan. I think that was a really comprehensive report. Particularly, thank you giving us an overview of the community work that you've been doing and the prevention work. The partnership working is coming through loud and clear, and the benefits of that, and that's wonderful to see, particularly like the comments around telecare and how you're addressing our most vulnerable people. So really, really welcome. So thank you very much. Councillor Pragnell got there just before you, Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, and thank you for such an excellent report.
Flashing green.
Your microphone.
No.
I noticed that you'd mentioned the increase in deliberate fire setting. I particularly noticed that in Ingemears North and Neilston. I take it we are aware and identified the causes of them, maybe antisocial behaviours involved and other things. But as you say, the weather was particularly good in May, so it's not surprising. Just a bit of reinsurance that you're aware of that, and I know how closely you work with the HSCP and the police to try and tackle these issues. Just
absolutely, Councillor. Thanks for the question. Absolutely, Councillor. Thanks for the question. I could probably at this point, Paul, if you'd like to come in, and we could give you an overview of a new initiative we've just rolled out, which is our community education calendar. And Paul, you'd probably be, if you're happy enough to speak on that.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for your question, Councillor. Yeah, so when we identify trends in deliberate fire setting or fire-related antisocial behaviour by young people, it's of the utmost importance that we work closely with our partners in CLD, with our police partners, HSCP partners, and identifying those individuals and performing the necessary interventions. And there's a whole suite of how those interventions might take shape. You've got what the Group Commander was talking about there is we've recently developed an education syllabus. Now, education has always been something that we've traditionally done, and it was done with varying levels of success depending on the establishment in question and the teacher and how interested certain people were in engaging with the fire service, which meant that some people were missing out, and it meant that we weren't delivering the initiatives to the best of our capabilities or using the resources most effectively. So what we've done is we've developed a calendar that we've issued to a single point of contact in each education establishment in the 3 local authority areas that I cover, and it offers certain topical engagements at certain times of year to certain age groups. So for example, in the run up to Bonfire Night, where we are at the moment, we're talking to P6 and P7, and there's another presentation directed towards S1 and S2. So it means that as these children and young people go through the education system, that they get a chance to cover the whole suite of engagement rather than come back every year for the same presentation, if you know what I mean. So, and then what we'll go into after the bonfire period, we'll go into talking to S3s about ice safety. There was, as you can imagine, last year after the Solihull tragedy, there was a massive influx for delivery of ice safety presentations to all school children, or all children and young people, as you can imagine. So what we've done is we've tried to box a bit more clever about that and put that in as part of our ongoing engagement strategy. So after exam time, we talk to the new S6s about young drivers, and that is delivered in partnership with our campus colleagues. And there's 3 parts to that. There's a presentation that's been developed by Police Scotland that we deliver. There's also a crashed vehicle that we have that we take to the school, and we can show the young people basically how to extricate a casualty from a crashed vehicle. And the third part of it, as the Group Commander spoke about, is a interactive VR presentation that we deliver. It's a 7-minute video of a simulated RTC with young people in a car, and it's quite hard hitting, which is also vital that we only deliver it to the relevant age group. We couldn't be showing that to younger children and young people. It just wouldn't be appropriate. So, as I say, that is being delivered, and it's being, as has always really been the case in East Renfrewshire, it's been really well received by our education partners, and we're currently filling up the calendar for the year ahead, and we'll revisit that after Christmas as well, just to develop interest in the other packages that we're going to deliver for the rest of the school year.
Yeah.
It's great to hear of the partnership working going on, and I think it's something that hopefully our pupils and young people will value, and it's giving them life skills for the future as well. You mentioned about incidences out with the local authority. I think we're all aware of the massive fire at the Carnbooth House Hotel. I was just wondering if appliances from East Renfrewshire were deployed, given how close it is to our boundaries. I do understand there's a joint investigation between yourselves and Police Scotland at the moment, and there has been indications that it was deliberate, but I don't know how much you can elaborate on that, but certainly the talk of all the Clarkson and Busby pages when it was happening because of its close proximity to our area. So if there's any more information on that, that would be appreciated.
So the update I can give you on that is that it wasn't directed towards our area. It sat out with our area. Our appliances may be involved, but we've got a national asset, so we would spread right across Scotland. So dependent upon what activity was already going on within the area, it may be that the boundary it sits within, their appliances already at another instant, and our appliances would then go to go into that area to help out. Or it may be the case that they just need further support. So if we initially turn out our predetermined attendance, maybe 2 or 3 appliances to a premises like that, we need to bring some appliances in from the local boundary, and it makes sense to bring them in from the closest area because time is of the essence, obviously, with something like that. But we're always backfilling that, so it would have no impact on us. But the likes of that wouldn't necessarily come through in our figures. That wouldn't be attributed to us. That the case that's happened here is because of the close proximity on the road system that's there. And what we'll be doing as we move forward, as we always do, when I see a rise there needs to be justification for that rise. So I'll look into that further to find out exactly where that is. And in this case, I knew there was something wasn't right there, and I was able to identify that it wasn't sitting within our locality. It was something which was attributed through a neighbouring locality.
Councillor Bamford.
Thanks, Chair. First, I'm delighted that you've asked, because as we know, as you mentioned, about the fact that it frees your officers, your staff up to do far more preventative work, which leads me on to the falls strategy. As members of the IGB know how incredible the falls, slips and falls strategy, and it's hard for you to get that across unless you're part of HSCP or IGB, because you can't measure something that doesn't happen. So I don't think everyone appreciates how much that actually is such a vital tool for keeping our vulnerable people safe. The experiential training sounds great, and sign me up for that. I'd like to do that. And I was delighted about the students from the local schools, and I'll come along to that. They're passing out parade or whatever the technical name for that is. And you've stolen my thunder, because I was going to ask you about the preventative work, but it sounds like what you're doing in the schools is fantastic. Because what I'd said to Michelle way back a few months ago is where a lot of the issues we're having now in the schools and the fire setting were because children missed the transitions, because we used to go along to safety in the park, and then we did the S1 stuff and the S2, and I wondered if our young people had missed out on that. So what you're offering now seems a step ahead of that, because clearly, and certainly in my ward anyway, the things like the ice and the water safety, that is so crucial. So it's and the cars as well. We all know, I live beside Mountcastle High School. Come March, when they all turn 18, you'll see all the new drivers, and that is something that sounds fantastic. So I was going to ask you about if we'd come back to do the preventative work with the young people after COVID, but clearly you've gone above and beyond in that. So that sounds fantastic. And if you could send us in the information, I know you've kind of explained it there on what it is, because I think that would be, it's good to know. And it would be good to know when you come back to report if the schools are all uptaking these offers, because it's important to know if they're not, if there's anything we can do to speak at parent council meetings or whatever to encourage the teachers and the parents to make sure that their young people are signing up for really important, as Councillor Pragnell said, life skills.
That's brilliant, Councillor. Thanks very much, and really appreciate the support with that. One of the key kind of, I suppose, objectives we put in this programme that Paul and his team's put in place is being able to record it. As Paul mentioned briefly there, that some schools would take, or the uptake was greater than some other schools. So having a single point of contact within each of the local authorities within the schools, being able to contact them and give them the whole programme, and being able to say, right, so we can then quantify it by looking at the uptake. And if we have a school, for example, that is only taken up 2 of the programmes, and everybody else is taking up 6 of the programmes, then we highlight them, and then that's where it would be then key to come back in and use our partners to say, look, can you, put a wee bit of weight behind this and assist us to get this, because we want everybody taking up every programme. Again, it comes back to, I know I've mentioned it several times during Cabinet today, but it's being proactive and being preventative. The preventative strategy is what's going to reduce the outcome and the capacity that it's taken up on our resources just now. So if we can stop it and we can get in there early, that's key to it. I was just going to add in one thing as well, Paul and his team. So we spoke about Councillor Pragnell, who spoke about antisocial behaviour side. So that's one of the ones that we roll out in S1 and S2, Paul, is that right? So we're catching that early doors at that age where we're seeing that type of activity. So just to add that in. But no, listen, in terms of the fire reach course or the fire skills course, it'd be great to see. We'll send invites out to everybody. It's great to see everybody there. It's a great presentation. It's a great course. We'll all be there for the week, and we'll be there on the final day. And I'm sure you'll really like it. But I'll certainly draw on your support if we're not getting these courses taken up appropriately. Thanks very much.
Wallace.
You mentioned you had 358 home fire safety visits.
Yes.
Of these, how many did have an early detection system, and of these, how many were the interlinked system?
If they're within local authority premises, they'll already be fitted with the interlinked system that's in there. And any of the ones that we go into, if they don't have any detection, then we will immediately put detection in, temporary detection in, until such times as they get the recognised standards in there. I would need to get. I can give you details. We could get that, Paul, very quickly, couldn't we? I can provide you. I'll forward you on. I'll email you the details of the ones that we carried out and any that didn't have detection in. But I think clearly from the report, when we see, I think last report we were in the high 80s. This time it was 78% of the premises we're going into do have active detection in them. We're clearly managing to address that problem. There will be a few that we'll get into that don't have detection. There's various ways that we can address that. So we'll always leave some form of detection within premises. We'll never leave a premises without appropriate smoke detection. But also we will then follow that up by, if it's a private landlord, for example, through Private Landlords Association, through a local authority, we'll address that, and then we'll report, that we've came across this, and hopefully that drives that down as well. But in all cases, we'll leave appropriate detection in there.
Yeah, if we just follow up on that. Am I correct in thinking it's a legal requirement to have an interlinked system? Yes. In that case, when you do visit premises which do not either do not have a system, do not have a system at all, or if they do have a system that is not interlinked, what action do you take? Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. So, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, first and foremost, aren't the enforcing authority regarding the smoke alarm detection standard. That's enforced by the local authority. And the guidance that we've received is it's on a go lightly approach. There's two different ways that we'll look at it. If it's a privately owned dwelling, we do have a certain amount of funding available to provide link detection systems to homeowners who also are classed as high risk by way of the initial risk rating in our home fire safety visit database. So if you own your home and you are deemed to be at high risk, we will provide a link detection system. If you don't meet those criteria, we will give advice on your obligation to meet the standard, and we will also fit a standalone detection system where no detection system at all is present, and that's really as far as we've been instructed to take it at the moment. If it is a rented property, whether that be local authority or private landlord, as the group commander has said, we would get in touch with the relevant partner to report that the property is deficient in terms of the link detection standard, and they can take it forward from there.
Thank you. if it is a legal requirement, then is it against the law not to have one? And having said that, okay, I'll move on for that. I'm interested to hear your response to that. But the second one is that there's just a lot of dubiety over this interlinked system as to if you can have a conversation with somebody and they'll say, oh, it doesn't matter, that'll be okay. I've got a smoke detector up there, it's absolutely fine. So it's this kind of, excuse the pun, smoke and mirrors in terms of the, as to the level of enforcement and what happens to the individual if they do not have one. Because like all these things, I can only assume that the powers that be have brought this, have made this a piece of legislation because it does presumably save lives ultimately. So it's just to get a feeling of, is there going to become a stage at which you've gone through that preliminary stage at which people have been given advice, been given guidance. Is there going to come a stage at which say, right, that this is something that we have to be a little bit more firmer on, or do you believe it's not really a great issue? Just trying to get some clarity on an overview of how the fire and police view the fact that this is legislation and yet many people are not carrying it out. Thanks.
So thank you, Council. There's a few things in there. As Paul has spoken about, we've got current guidance just now, and unless that changed, we would continue along that route. There is a few facets of that, I suppose, and that is that if the insurance company who represent the householder, they should send through guidance to say to them that this is now the new tolerable standard, and they should adhere to that. So that's where the more the enforcement side it would come in. But in terms of us enforcing it, our job currently is just to ensure that everyone's safe. So where we identify that they don't have a suitable system, we would still put in some kind of form of smoke detection to make sure that it can identify a fire in the event that something happens within those premises. And until we've received further guidance and further direction on how to do it, we wouldn't change from that just now. But we currently, we're not there to police it, we're there to ensure and I suppose to an extent just now have a light approach to it, just make sure everybody's safe and direct any identified areas of deficiency towards the appropriate partners where possible.
Thank you. So there's no other question. I've got one question really, and since the last time I chaired this meeting, we've now introduced the new rules on UFAS in terms of the new Scottish Fire's approach to that. Education department still seems to be quite concerned about the new approach. I've been told. Can you give me any reassurances how that process is going and you know, what education are saying to you and how you're dealing with that?
Absolutely. So our enforcement officers are still working closely with local authority to provide support and guidance and direction on how they put measures in place. And this is nationally across the country because it's a big change. In terms of how successful it is, I'd be very hesitant to put out any facts and figures on it just now. However, what I could give, given you a kind of broad update on it, we've had somewhere in the region of about 1,200 calls challenged across Scotland in the previous month, and 600 in the west of Scotland across the previous month. So a call challenge would be where previously we would just have automatically turned a fire engine out it, and now our control staff will challenge that and ask, is there a fire there? And if somebody's just bumped the toast like you would do in your house, you're going to have a look, no, I've bumped my toast, and that would stop the resources going out, it would reduce the blue light journeys, and it releases that capacity. So in terms of the direction it's heading in the right direction, and I would certainly come back to Cabinet with more up-to-date details and accurate details once I have the appropriate information.
Okay, so we're monitoring.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for that. So, Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, yes, I was actually going to bring that up, and I appreciate what you've said. And I do think the Education Department have been working very closely with you on this, and I know that the schools have reviewed lots of plans, and they appreciate the the kind of partnership working with them to help them do that. But as Councillor Leader O'Donnell says, that there is still concern within the Education Department about it. Just wanted to mention that. Can I also very briefly mention the importance of what you were saying about the falls with the elderly people, because I'm very glad to hear it's a huge impact on if they lose their mobility and the ability to care for themselves. First and foremost for their own happiness, and quality of life, but obviously the impact beyond that of the care they may then require. So finally, the last thing is the 90% increase, or I think 90% of the incidents were car accidents. I do have noticed significantly now. I think the short journeys that are happening in East Renfrewshire have gone right back to as they were before the pandemic and the number. Obviously, we'll wait and see what the figures are, but are you concerned about that increase, with the number of journeys?
I think that it's always a concern to us when we see an increase in road traffic collisions, because whilst we've been very fortunate in terms of there's been nothing of a serious nature, that can very quickly change. Whether that be a built-up environment or in the road networks that we've got surrounding our local authority, they're quite fast-moving road networks, so they can become areas where we can have significant road traffic collisions which result in serious injury, life-changing injuries, or even worse than that. So certainly when we see a rise, we always would drill down into it to find out exactly where that rise has came from, which in this case, I've identified. However, we'll continue to work with that through our engagement programmes at schools for new drivers and through our work with colleagues in Police Scotland, who we work very closely with. For areas where we identify trends, we would pass on that information to police colleagues, and through their traffic department and local engagement, we would do whatever work was necessary to try and minimise this. When we get areas of hotspots, whether it be road traffic collisions, whether it be incidental dwelling fires or any activity, again, and I can't say it enough, partnership working, we can't do it alone, but it's again about signposting it to the relevant partners to come in as a collective to be able to reduce this, and that's key to the whole thing.
Absolutely, and in terms of that, in education in the schools, and it's excellent, and we'll play our part as best we can to make sure the schools are aware of it and they don't engage with you.
Excellent, thanks very much.
Okay, I think we're all done. No other questions. So with that, that's the end of our meeting. And again, I'd like to thank our colleagues from Scottish Police and Scottish Fire and Rescue for very comprehensive reports, and thanks for our members for good line of questioning. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Yeah.